content presented in this podcast is based on real events and may contain graphic descriptions of violence, sensitive topics, and explicit language that may be triggering, offensive, or sensitive subjects to some viewers and listeners. Discretion is advised. The purpose of this podcast is to explore and discuss true crime cases for entertainment and educational purposes only. This podcast does not intend to glorify or sensationalize crime, but rather aims to analyze and understand the complexities of human behavior in the criminal justice system. We encourage listeners to approach this content with empathy, critical thinking, respect for the victims and their families. You're standing at a crime scene. The evidence is limited. The witnesses are unreliable, and yet, you know something's off. You feel it. Not in your gut, but from somewhere deeper. What if the victim was still there, not in body, but in spirit, and trying to tell you what really happened? Tonight, we sit down with someone who lives on the intersection of the badge and beyond, a man who doesn't just seek justice, he sometimes hears it whispering from the other side. So with that being said, it's time to start the show. Let's hit it. Hi, welcome to another episode of Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot. I am your host, Winnie Schrader. Well, tonight's guest is no stranger to walking that thin blue line. He is a seasoned law enforcement officer by day, but by night, well, when the sun goes down, he taps into something most cops wouldn't even talk about. Now, Scott Davis isn't just a police officer, he is also a psychic medium who's investigated cases both with the badge and his sixth sense. And he also is the host of the new show Phantom Forensics, who we had Dalen Spratt, his co-host, on last Sunday. So I would love to welcome Scott to the show. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Hey, what's up? How are you?
Oh, I'm good. Well, Phantom Forensics, I tuned into it. Dave's talked about it. I had Dale on. We talked about it. This is a phenomenal series, and the formula
Thank you.
is different. But I
Yeah.
wanted to get a little bit more backstory on your career in law enforcement and how that duality between being a police officer and having the ability to tap into the other side. And most cops are kind of, hush hush about it.
Yeah.
um, but so kind of give us a backstory on your abilities and how you became a cop and how you've kind of blended those two things together.
Yeah, sure. So it's interesting. Since I was a little kid, I kind of had this thought since I was probably about 5 that I was going to be a police officer. There's no other police officers in my family. I'm it. So it was strange for me to, in my opinion, kind of just like have that thought that that's what I was going to do. Somebody along the way must have impressed me or impressed upon me, maybe a police officer or something. And it kind of set my life that way. Now, throughout my life, I wasn't one of these people that was thinking about it into my teenage years, or I should have probably been thinking about it and getting better grades and all those things. But I lived life, and probably around my early 20s in the state of New Jersey, you have to take a test to get qualified to become a police officer. So I took this test and did pretty well. But not well enough because at the time becoming a police officer here was ridiculously difficult. You had to score, like I scored a 94% on the test. To get even an interview, you had to score like 98% and above. So I did well, but I didn't do well enough. So I gave it another shot. a year or two later, and it still didn't go anywhere. And fate sometimes has a strange way of stepping in and guiding us when we're not expecting it. I remember being at a local fair or something like that, and I was standing in line next to this gentleman, and I chat with everybody, and he was chatting with me a little bit, and he actually introduced himself as the chief of police for the town. And I was like, oh, that's
Mhm.
really interesting. I'd really love to be a police officer in this town. How would I go about doing that? And he was just like, you know what, kid, it's really difficult, but what you can do is join the military, get deployed, and become a veteran. And when you get back, you'll have a much better shot of getting hired. And as a matter of fact, what he said to me was, if you join the United States Marine Corps, I will almost guarantee you that I will get you a job back in this town. Now, I kind of tucked that away, and I was like, okay, well, now I know, but boy, that's the most physically demanding route you could possibly go ever to get a
Right.
job. Some time passed after that, and I just didn't get motivated enough. And actually, what happened was, again, something rang in my ears. I joined the Marine Corps at 23 years old. I turned 24 in boot camp. I did a couple deployments from 2000. I was in the Marine Corps from 2005 to 2010. And then when that was over, I came back. And wouldn't you know it, they weren't hiring any police officers. But that wasn't the fault of the
Oh.
chief. It was just because there was like this huge economic turndown that was like crushing everything in 2010. So
Mhm.
um, I met with him, and there's still the same chief, and he said, "You know what? Actually, we have a job for a 911 dispatcher slash call taker. If you come take that job at our headquarters for a couple years until we're ready to hire guys, we'll hire you." So I sat for 2 years on a desk answering 911 calls and dispatching police, fire, and EMS. That was
Oh.
that was very stressful. You want to talk about having to learn about intuitiveness? That would be one of those times, because people on the phone, if anybody remembers just talking on the phone to somebody, it's difficult to imagine a an emergency when you're on the phone with
Mhm.
somebody. What's happening there, right? So a lot of times, uh, while you're taking a 911 call, you're kind of letting your imagination go wild with what's happening. So that was sort of
Right.
my first experience with that, and that's after, again, the Marine Corps, which, two deployments, was very stressful. This was a new kind of stress, and it was introducing me to what I was hopefully going to be doing, which was becoming
Mhm.
a police officer. And around 2012 or so, spots opened up in the department. I got hired. I went to the police academy, and I became a patrolman, which is what I do to this day. I drive a police car. I respond to emergencies, traffic accidents, EMS calls, the gambit. You name it, I show up to it. Fires, whatever the emergency is, our police department responds to it, and I'm happy to be one of those people.
Right. Well, I remember the show Rescue 911 with, William Shatner. They would always have the 911 calls, they always played the
Oh,
tape and
yes.
and I was like, "How can those people on the, at the 911 dispatch, how can they understand what's going on?"
Oh yeah, a lot of
Because
times you have to learn
oh,
how to speak with somebody and be assertive, but also kind to them because there's something happening. So
right.
you'd have to rein them in, and be like, okay, just remember to focus on me while I'm on the phone. Breathe. I have somebody
Mhm.
coming, and just the reassurance that there was emergency service coming to help was always the most important thing.
Yeah,
You know?
and that probably gave you a little edge that other most police officers don't. You understanding that other side of the call,
Yeah.
listening to what dispatch has to deal with and how they're relaying the messages to you. I mean, it's a very fine-tuned gears that have to be in time
Yep.
for just an
So
emergency call to be properly assessed, but okay, so you're a
yeah.
police officer. Now, when was the first moment you had kind of that really profound, both psychic medium moment while on duty?
While on duty. Okay, so the first time that I had a crazy incident that happened on duty, where it it wasn't just me experiencing it, it was several other people at the same time as well. And I thought
Mhm.
that it was really interesting. And I'll tell you a second story right after that. So there was this wrecked car on a dirt road. It's one of the only ones left here in our town. And this car just got abandoned on the side of the road. It was wrecked into the weeds in a ditch. And on both sides of this dirt road, it's just wide enough for like maybe two cars to slowly pass. And it's weeds, and then there's fields and trees and nothing, and it's very dark. So this car gets abandoned. We respond to it, and while we're waiting, myself and two colleagues were waiting for a tow truck to come at like 2:30 in the morning. We hear what sounds like an old timey tractor start up, and this tractor goes "Whop," and you can hear
Mhm.
the exhaust lid on top of like an old smokestack doing that like
Yeah.
rhythmic tapping. And about 10 yards from us, we see this little orange light glow through the woods. And it's me and two other guys. And it's completely dark except for some squad car lights that are pretty well behind us because we walked to where the cars was left. And these two guys are staring at me, and this little orange globe of light through the leaves just glides through as we hear a tractor pass. And as we picked up our, police flashlights are very bright. We pick up our lights and we're
Yeah.
looking, and there's nothing. Our lights going through everything, but we are expecting to see some tires, a tractor, somebody driving the tractor. There's nothing. And basically, what happened
Weird.
was this: the two fellas next to me were like, "You know what, buddy? This is your call anyway, and none of this ever happens when you're not here. So we're gonna go. You're fine here." And that was that. They left me on the side of the road. I sat with that car for about an hour until the tow truck got there, completely on my own. So I'll tell you this: law enforcement officers are often very brave. They run into crazy situations that most people don't want to. However, sometimes even the supernatural will scare them away. So that was one time that was very interesting, and I got to have that experience with other people. But one other time that was like it blew my mind as to what was happening was I went to a CPR call. A man and a woman were having dinner, and unfortunately, this woman just sort of passed out during dinner. I was the first officer to respond. I was there. I just happened to be around the corner, so I was there within like 30 seconds, and I was able to get her on the floor, and I started doing CPR. And as I was doing compressions, um, I actually could see her standing next to her body. Like I saw her exact identical form standing next to her, and she looked
Oh.
down at me, and I remember looking up while I was pressing on her chest, and she just went like almost like I don't know what's happening, but I'm witnessing this. And as I
Yeah.
made eye contact with her, she just sort of vanished. And when the paramedics came, they pronounced her deceased. She had had some sort of really major medical issue and passed away rather quickly. So I believe that I got
Wow.
to see her right before she left.
Wow.
Yeah,
That
and that was
that
profound. That was scary.
yeah.
That was scary for reasons that are not scary in the paranormal. They're scary because it speaks to us as human beings and what we are actually aware of before we pass.
Mhm.
And the many readings I've done in my life where people are like, "Oh, I was standing outside my body in the hospital room before I passed." Well, she was standing outside of her body in her living room right before she passed.
That's
It was pretty interesting.
yeah, and to be there at that moment witnessing it on our side of things is phenomenal. I've never heard of a story like that. I mean, you always hear about, like, on the operating table that somebody saw a mist or something, but, like, yeah, to, like, literally see her spirit form standing next to her body while you're trying to revive her, that's amazing.
Yeah, I don't think I've
Um
ever told that story publicly, by the way, so that's interesting.
Wow, that's gotta be probably a top 10 in a psychic medium's playbook, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, top 10 moments or whatever, we should have, like, a show on just top 10 moments of psychic mediums.
Yeah. It's
Um
funny too because I wasn't expecting it. I'm there to do a job. I was there
Mhm,
trying to save someone's life. So I wasn't dialed into that part of me at all. It just
mhm.
was so present that I could just see it. It was just one of those things.
Yeah, that is really profound and phenomenal to have that moment. Um, Now, on the other side of things, when you have to go on, let's say, a call where it's domestic violence, you have to deal with an irrational person or they've committed a crime. Um, have have you ever been able to pick up on any type of negative energies around these criminals, especially ones that are, like, really violent? Can you sense something around them that other police officers obviously don't see or sense?
So, it's interesting when it comes to things like that. When it comes to people who are perhaps more violent than others, they have the thickest walls. I don't feel anything around them. That's
Okay.
actually usually the first indication that it's going to be a tougher call than normal because for me, and I think these days many police officers, we deal with things much differently than we used to. We consider somebody's mental health, we consider their status, how they're everything about them. It's not just this person is a piece of junk because they're in front of me and I need to do my job and they're definitely going to be in trouble, right? It's definitely
Mhm.
like, okay, I see the totality of the situation. I'm going to try to come at this with a lot of empathy and respect and try to understand the best I can what they're going through in order to dial them down and bring them down to where I'm at and be calm so that we can deal with it. Those people, you can feel the emotion coming off of them. Many times, we can walk into, at least I walk into homes and I can feel it. It's the same feeling that you get walking into a haunted house or a haunted location. You walk in and there's this pressure that forms if
Mhm.
you're aware of it. And you could feel it press on your chest or a little bit on your head. And you know that there is some sort of animosity, some sort of anxiety that is pressing on you. So when we feel that, it's good actually because it lets us know that there's going to be an ebb and flow of energy. When it comes to people who are spectacularly upset and outraged and enraged, they are giving so much energy off and they don't want to hear anything. They have blinders, so there's no give and pull of energy at all. They're the ones that unfortunately almost will never listen to talking, but sometimes do if you give them the time and space and really can work on it. But yeah, and to answer this interesting question about um, energy, I wanted to talk about this. There's some homes in my town that I'm aware of, and I've been aware of since I was little, that have been purchased and sold, and purchased and sold, and purchased and sold. And looking back or taking calls at some of these places and
Mhm.
going into it, I can see why nobody lives there long and why the families or the occupants of these spaces are getting angry and enraged with each other because there just seems to be something permeating in the walls of these places that is causing them to be angry and upset. And I'm sure you've heard that before. Like, you move into a home and there's some sort of entity or energy or whatever we want to call it, just holding on inside there. And anybody who comes in is in the meat grinder and they just get beat up by it. And then they have
Right.
their own problems because of it. And if law enforcement officers, caseworkers, anybody who has the privilege of going into somebody else's home to help, pay attention to those sorts of patterns because it might help down the road diagnose what's happening and might give you a better understanding of how to deal with the issue, or give you a
Mhm.
little bit of a leg up instead of just constantly having to go into that same kind of pressure cooker yourself.
Now, with that being said, have you given any advice to some of these homeowners or other police officers about house cleansings? I mean, I don't know where everybody sits on kind of bringing those things up, but, like, if you've had to go to a house numerous times over or you'd say, "Hey, on the side, I can maybe help you do a house cleansing to see if we can eradicate this negative energy and help you guys live in a home that's more happy than
Yeah.
sad and angry."
So
It's kind
I
of a weird
have
question, but
it is, and it's always strange, right? So I don't do that because they need to have trust in the fact that the person that they're standing in front of is 100% like a solid, grounded human being that's going to help them get through their
gotcha.
problems. I have made suggestions that, sort of like hey, I don't know what religion you believe in, but maybe having somebody come in and bless the house might help you
Oh,
guys. It might
perfect.
help bring some happiness here. Or and I always suggest the easy steps of like, hey, why don't you go talk to a counselor? You know, like there's free programs where you can just go talk to somebody, and hopefully that person will be their link to be able to do that. But for me, in a uniform with you know, the authority that I have, it's very important to make sure that when I show up, I'm there for that,
Mhm.
and I wear that that uniform all the way through, so that they understand that I will help them as best I can with that situation. Right? You don't want your local law enforcement who's coming in to help you with an emergency to like take off their their baseball cap and then put on their jewel crystal helmet and be like, all right, now let's clear this space out, baby, and then burn the safe.
Mecca
You know,
licka
I,
high, Mecca honey
because
ho.
yeah, exactly. Because we don't want them to necessarily be like, oh my God, because you don't know where they stand in the world on their views, right?
Right.
So you don't want them to be like, oh God, what kind of weirdo did they send here? So now, if the topic ever comes up, and it does every once in a while, I'll talk to people pretty generally about it. But most folks don't really know publicly hear like my two sides.
Now, during the Halloween season, the veil between the worlds gets thinner and the chills get real. Oh, so very real. Something is waiting in the dark and it's calling your name.
So answer the call this Halloween season for the Paranormal 60 presents Halloween Haunts and Hijinks October 9th through the 12th for a supernatural weekend you'll never forget. It's being held at the historic haunted Palmer House Hotel in Sauk Center, Minnesota. Join Dave Schrader from the Holzer Files, Ghosts of Devil's Perch, and the host of the Paranormal 60 podcast. He's teaming up with Dalen Spratt from Ghost Brothers and Phantom Forensics. And we have heart-centered, intuitive Diet Renee for a weekend packed with spine-tingling experiences. You'll have 2 nights of live investigations and paranormal experiments, interactive workshops, gallery readings, and meet and greets, live presentations with experts themselves. This isn't just an event, it's a doorway to the unknown. So you have to ask yourself, do you dare cross it? Now, tickets are limited, so please book your Halloween Haunts and Hijinks adventure now at darknessevents.com. Again, that is darknessevents.com. So the interview I did with Dalen, the question I asked him, and I was eager to ask you was, since police officers and law enforcement, FBI, they have used psychic mediums to help find missing people, cold cases, things like that. Do you feel like we're getting closer to using more investigative tools like spirit box sessions, things that you would do on Phantom Forensics as part of an investigative tool to help solve a case on their side of things? Because Dalen wasn't sure, but with you being in
Yeah,
law enforcement, you kind of have your ear to the ground. Do you feel like we're getting closer to that, or?
I don't think so.
Oh,
For sure, some police officers out in the world will listen to a medium or a psychic if they come through with some valid information that maybe the police officer or the department already knows about their investigation but was private. So if a medium or a psychic came forward voluntarily and gave them some information and it was partially what they already knew and could confirm, that might help them believe the rest of the information. I cannot speak for anybody at all. I can only speak for myself and my own experience. I do not bring that kind of stuff to work ever. And the reason is that I don't want to muddy the waters in any investigation that takes away from the black and white facts of exactly what the investigation is or what it entails. Because many times, I'm sure doing what you do, and I love reading interesting stories, and not that I like in the beginning of this, I don't grandize anybody murders or anything like that. It's
yeah.
not those aren't good people. But I am very interested in people's stories, people who go missing, people who are found deceased, and why can't we find the people who did this? What is the gap? Why aren't we figuring that out? In cases like that, if enough time has gone by, I would say that I myself, and I would encourage other law enforcement officers or anybody that has this type of authority to find somebody who is a reputable medium and just tell them the truth. Say, I'm in law enforcement. We are at a roadblock on this. I don't know where to go. I'm not going to give you any information except for the very bare minimum, maybe a name or a photograph. Tell me what you get. And use that information to either confirm some things maybe that you already know, or give you a new avenue or perspective to head in. But we don't want to muddy the waters by stepping in and being like, Sarah was, I see her, she's in a field and there's an old windmill, and you're completely off. You're not naming anything accurate. And then all of a sudden we're using valuable law enforcement resources and time to go look somewhere that might sound relevant, but has nothing to do with what we're doing. So that's, I think, why not so much that law enforcement officers don't believe in it, but they know the value of the dollar when we're investigating, and it isn't up to us who spends that money. It comes from very high up, where those things are allocated, well out of my my pay grade for sure.
Well, I was wondering that, like, let's say you're on the scene of a murder scene. You're there to, do whatever you're stationed to do. But have you ever had like spirits try to influence you? I have a comical vision in my head of like, oh, spirit next to you be like, he's lying, he's the one who did it. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that.
Yeah. So
It,
far, no, but I do like
oh,
where your head's on it. I think that we could probably write a good sitcom or some sort of first person cam about that. I think it would be really funny. But no, so far I haven't had anything like that. I've had it on paranormal investigations where I'm open and receiving lots of information, and I've had spirit give me really interesting clues about the house to talk about that spook the homeowner. But as far as the law enforcement side, no. I mean, again, I'm not open when I'm there. Like if I'm at a scene where somebody's actively been unalived, deceased, murdered, whatever we're allowed to say here, is I'm I'm with you guys. Like I'm on this side with you guys, and I'm like, we need to absolutely start like interviewing. We need to start collecting evidence. We need to start we need to do all of the procedural stuff, black and white stuff that we know for a fact solves crimes. Let's get that going. And it's very chaotic when you're at scenes like this. It's not as quite as much as they make on TV, but it is like that. Like there's, you have first aiders, you have fire departments sometimes, definitely law enforcement. Then you have your higher up detectives, depending on who passed, maybe even higher up folks than them. And it's a big
yeah.
scene. So we really have to stay focused and grounded right here to make sure we're not ruining any physical evidence, or letting somebody walk away that we really should have spoken to. It's very important. But I do like
I,
I like that question. Maybe someday, who knows? And if that day
I
happens, and it's me, if I'm on duty and it happens to me, I luckily I have enough friends in the detective bureau that I might be able to just do like a little tug on the sleeve and be like, listen, I would say like, you could take this however you like. You know who I am. This is what I'm being told, and you don't have to put that in any report. It's just, hey, because we can't bring that
put
to
it
court,
out
right?
there.
Imagine I'm standing on the stand and I'm like, I do hereby swear that I like
I
they did
know.
it right there, right now. We
Who
can't do
told
that.
you? Who's your
It,
source? Uh,
right,
like
exactly. And we
me.
just can't do that. And I never would. I would never put anybody else in a position to do that. So
Yeah.
that's what we'll do. Although when I am retired from my active duty law enforcement, there's definitely a good chance that I will offer my services to other law enforcement bureaus, whoever they might be, if they need help, for sure.
Oh, that would be awesome because, I can't imagine being a police officer or detective, especially on a case that you've been working on and you've built a relationship with, let's say, the family of a missing loved one, and you've been, it's for 12 months you've been trying to find their daughter or their son. I mean, you grow an emotional attachment to this family, so it's almost like you feel obligated to keep going and keep going. But when you hit those roadblocks, it's like, what do you do?
So
And
I'll give you one. I was not on duty as a law enforcement officer, but this does cross paths pretty heavily. Um,
okay.
I was so very often in the beginning of my career learning how to do mediumship. I would go to house parties where like somebody would hire me and they'd have like 10 girlfriends or friends or whatever there. I never knew who I was going to go talk to. I would just show up. They'd put me in a room and I'd start doing readings. So this one several years ago, I got to the last reading of the day, and these two women walked in. It's a mother and a daughter, and they sit down. And the first information that comes through is about this gentleman who passed away. And he tells me about how he gets sick. And then he's telling me what really helped them understand that the next things that I was going to say were true was this. I remember this so clearly. I said, listen, this gentleman wants you to know that your decision to take him off life support was the right decision. He wasn't going to make it. And he said, thank you, because you helped him. You didn't hold him. You helped him feel better. And that's what he wants to tell you. Is thank you for that. And the two ladies had so much guilt about that they were so relieved. And what happened after I gave that message was behind him in the far distance. I don't know how to explain this, but it's distance in the spirit world is a little strange. But there was this woman standing behind him, and she was in darkness, and she was kind of feeling around. And I knew that this was important, and I knew that he, for some reason, wasn't aware of her, but somehow they were connected. So I asked the
Okay.
two ladies if I could bring this woman through and talk to her, and they perked up and they were like, "Go ahead." So I bring this woman forward and I say, "Okay, she's lost. I believe that she was murdered." And then I gave some information, again, not on law enforcement time. This is my own time. I said she's telling me that her husband did this. She's showing me a basement where she was violently attacked. She was brought to a boat, and she was brought out to the water and gotten rid of. And there's a strong connection between the three of you. And I was hesitant, but when I opened my eyes to talk to them again, they were bawling. This had been the missing sibling I didn't know about. And they
Oh,
suspected that the husband was at fault. So
oh
I got a
my
call from
gosh.
several days after that. I got a call, and basically, I'm not going to say who it was, but basically, what I was told was, "You're 100% accurate in everything you're saying, and what we believe happened.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, we have right now this person is just a missing person. However, several days after she went missing, this boat got sold that they did own." And the person of interest would not let them in the home because they didn't have a warrant, and there was no physical evidence and no reason for law enforcement to be able to get a warrant into the house because there was no signs of distress. There was nothing. But this person was like, you confirmed a lot of what we think. And now I know that we need to really drill down on this and see what we can come up with. Because if you can get that information, then it has to be accurate, because I knew nothing, right? So
Mhm.
I don't know what became of it. I had to recuse myself further from it because it's active law enforcement case. But yeah, that's one of those things where, like, if I stumble on it, and that's happened several times, where I'm doing a reading for
Yeah.
somebody, I don't know who they are, and then all of a sudden I realize like I'm giving details to a very active case. I've had a prosecutor call me and almost point the finger at me, which is part of the reason why I don't get so involved, because I had so much information that was given to me. It's
Mhm.
dangerous, and you have to be careful. That's why I think when I'm retired, it'll be safer for me to say like, okay, I was one of you guys. I respect what you're doing, and if you want my help, I'm right here, and I can help if possibly, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's one of those ties that happens with law enforcement and you know doing what I do.
Yeah, and that is a very thin line that you have to walk because you wanna help, you know how you can help, you know what your
Right.
abilities are, but then you have to, like, bite your tongue. Um, now,
Yeah.
have there this doesn't have anything to do with you being a medium or anything, but what has been your funniest moment as a police officer on patrol? I love
I've had a lot of funny moments. I think probably one of the funniest moments came when I was a very young officer, probably like my first year or so on the job. Um, I'm in New Jersey, for anybody who doesn't know, and New Jersey is not known for alligators. However, one day I responded to a call for an alligator in a wooded park that we have here. And on my way, I was like, "There's no way there's an alligator loose in the park up here. They don't exist in New Jersey, right? Like unless they're in a zoo or something, right?" So I was like, "This is ridiculous." So I get to this area, and there's a guy on the side of the road, and he's waving me down. He's like, "Over here, over here." So I meet this guy, and he's like, right in there, about like 50 yards in, there's an alligator, and I'm like, "This guy's setting me up. Like I think this is some kind of joke. I'm about to get pranked." So I walk into the woods, and sure enough, there's like a 5-foot alligator sitting there. And I was like, "Holy cow, it's a real alligator." It probably wasn't 5 feet. I'm exaggerating. It was probably like 3 feet. You know, like when the fishermen are like, "It was this big." It was probably like that big.
Yeah.
But it was an alligator.
Well,
It was a big one.
either way, it
So,
had teeth.
yeah. So I was like, "Man, what am I gonna do?" And I'm like calling dispatch. I'm like, "Hey, there's an alligator here. I think I need animal control or something. I don't know." And they were like, "Oh, we'll get a park ranger out there." So in the meantime, I don't want to lose the alligator. So inside the police car, we had Rubbermaid totes, and I had a big like 30-gallon one that had like a bunch of gear in it. So I dumped all the gear out, and I brought it into the woods. And I, from remembering watching countless hours of Steve Irwin, I was like, "All right, I know I got to get behind this thing, and if I can get behind it and I can cover it up, I'm going to be just fine." So I went around it, and I did just that. I had my my Rubbermaid tote, and I walked up. It probably heard me. I'm not a light human, and it didn't move though. So I got behind it, and I put the box on top of it, nice and safe. The alligator was safe, I promise you. And then after that happened, I heard it banging on the sides. I sat on it, and I waited for 20 minutes for the park ranger to come, and they came and took care of it. But alligator wrangler wasn't in my job description, but I did it. And that's one of my
No.
favorite, funniest moments, and it was just me, and it was well before body cameras, which is unfortunate because that's one I would have liked to keep. That's one I would have liked to keep.
Right? That would have been on, like, America's Funniest Home Videos, and
Yeah,
my son did that to his little brother one day. I go
same.
in, and he had his little brother inside the tote, he was sitting on top of the tote.
Yeah.
So I know
Well, I'm a
exactly
big
what
brother. That's where I learned that move, from doing it to my sisters growing up. Yeah, that's not a new move. I know how to do that. Sure. I
Oh
wouldn't
god.
recommend trapping anything dangerous like an alligator like that, folks. Disclaimer, don't do that. But I had a job to do. I didn't want it disappearing, because then I would have
Right.
been on the hook for helping find an alligator in these giant wooded area that we have. And I didn't want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, he
So it
was
turns out
really
it
out of
was
his element.
probably somebody's pet that they let go,
Yeah, I got too big
which
for
is
the
sad.
bathtub, so there.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Okay, well, let's move on to phantom forensics because we talked with Dalen last week about this new series that you guys have created.
Hmm.
You can go to phantomforensics.com. I'll have a link for that in today's description, along with your website, which is
ScottyTheMedium.com. Nice
perfect.
and easy. Scotty the
Yeah.
Medium. Yep.
Yep, I'll have a link for that in today's show notes as well. So, Forensics, you have filmed just 3 episodes. Is that correct? And that was the one for Cleveland, Ohio,
For Columbus, Ohio. Yeah.
or
So
Columbus. Yes.
yeah, we have 3 episodes out right now on YouTube. You can go watch it. Just look up Phantom Forensics in your search bar, and you can check it out.
Okay. So now, Phantom Forensics. How is this different? Because Dalen has been on Ghost Brothers, Lights Out, all these, and now he has his the Graveyard Shift
Graveyard
on
shift. Yep.
YouTube, which is awesome.
Hmm.
He has a phenomenal gift of communicating using that tool. It's like they just love to just have a chat with Dalen. It's like a
Who doesn't?
conversation with a
He's one of
buddy.
the
I know.
kindest people I've ever met. Of course, we like
I
talking to Dalen.
know. I know. Well, you too. I mean, you are a very
Well, thank you.
genuine. Your voice is very calming. Like just talking to you, and I know my audience is gonna agree with me. Just listening to your voice, so the way you tell it, it's like you can keep people centered. It is like you put people in a meditative state, and that's a great skill to have. But phantom forensics. So, what's
Yeah.
kind of basis formula for this type of paranormal show? I don't like calling it reality because it's not. You guys are really doing. This is not just people running around with ghost hunting
Right.
equipment. You guys do the
Yeah.
research. You
Yeah.
are
This was
experienced. Professional.
This was 100% a reaction to what's been getting put out in the last 10 to 15 years. We know that, of course, we all grew up on the same kind of television when it first came out, Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures. And then, of course, our buddy Dave came along, and his show with the Holzer Files was a completely different type
Yeah.
of paranormal investigation show. And I'd say that we took a little bit of a cue from that, because and for me personally, and I tell this Dave anytime I get a chance, is that in a time where I was just done watching anything paranormal entertainment because it was so saturated and was just getting boring to watch, unfortunately, when the Holzer Files showed up, I watched the first episode, and then after I watched it, I remember setting an alarm in my calendar and being like, okay, every Tuesday at 9 o'clock on Travel, this is going to be on. I actually like this show. It has a heart. It has a heart to
Mhm.
it. And that is something that is missing. And I don't have any shade for any YouTubers out there. I love all of you. Thank you for keeping this genre alive. A big shout out to Sammy Colby and Colin at the Paranormal Files and Exploring with Josh. They're three huge YouTubers that were kind enough to have me on their shows in the past. And they did a really great job. They continue to do a really great job. Their success proves that people love what they're doing. For me, I wanted to develop a show where we dial some of the running and gunning back and bring some of that heart to the story, where we are really
Mhm.
authentically understanding who these people are that we're talking to or trying to talk to, and that we can tell their story from a perspective of somebody looking in at them in the moment when something is happening, but also how history views them and how they're remembered. So there was a lot
Mhm.
of discussion about how to do that. And our phenomenal producer, Kay Rothman, who I've been working with for several years to develop some other properties, um, she's the narrative genius on all of this stuff. She's really the person who brings these stories together, and she's the one who makes sure that we are telling the story properly. Because I'm going to
Mhm.
tell everybody right now, I don't have the tools to tell the story properly. I don't believe that Dalen has them. I don't think that any one person ever has that ability, but she is one of these special people that really understands how to tell a story and make it meaningful. And that's
Mhm.
why when I met her, um, I immediately kind of was just like, this is somebody who I need to work with, because she knows what she's doing, and it's what I need to help tell my stories. So we developed
Mhm.
Phantom Forensics as a way to do that. And it didn't matter. Ohio happened to be where she lives at the moment, and it was convenient. But we could do Phantom Forensics anywhere on the planet, and it will be
Mhm.
the same thing. It'll be full of heart, good stories, really interesting paranormal evidence to bring forward, and the thought provoking part of it, provocating part of it is like, why is it happening,
Yeah.
and what's going to happen next, and where's it going to bring us, right?
Right. And, I think it's a generational thing too, because like when Holzer Files came out, obviously that's all we talked about in our household was when was Holzer Files coming out.
Yep.
I was proud of Dave for his work on that because it gave an intellectual feeling to the paranormal community. It
Yep.
wasn't just the flash of, demons and something evil, which is fine. But that to me is more for the younger YouTube generation kind of kids. Whereas the Holzer Files was more of that, and I'm not putting down the younger generation, but
Yeah, no, not
they
at all.
work at a different
They have
level,
their
you know
yeah, they have their place. They're doing a great job.
Yeah, but, like, what do we do with the Gen Xers and the millennials? We're sitting here like, "Well, I wanna know about the history of the place. I wanna know." So, it's
Right.
almost like they were doing a cold case for the paranormal. It's like they were
Yeah.
solving. So I really, really like that, and, a lot of people love that formula, and it gave kind of a new look and a new, I think, thought process to the paranormal,
Yeah.
community to say, we can look at these as more of an intellectual thing and look at the history and don't take history for as it's written. It might
Yeah.
be different. So and that happened on the Holzer Files. There was moments where literally what they were told in history books was not what would happen and what they picked up on, and they have evidence of it. It was
Right.
amazing. So you guys
So
are taking that, and that's awesome.
yeah, so I always say it's a little Holzer Files, it's a little Dead Files because of what I do.
Mhm.
Cindy, of course, from Holzer Files and so many other shows, is amazing medium. In Phantom Forensics, that is my job. Is again, I go in with no information, just like any good medium should do, and I try to connect as deeply as possible with the energy that is in front of me without taking in the physical world that is around me, because that many times will throw people. And
Mhm.
it was so interesting. Well, I always say when I do readings or do these investigations, I cast a wide net. I don't go in with any expectations. I literally just close my eyes and sort of just throw out this big spiritual fishing net and see
Mhm.
what information is going to come back to me and how it's relevant. Now, some of those things that come back during the Phantom Forensics, there were things that were coming back to me that I was talking about that Kay and the research team had no idea what I was talking about. As a matter of fact, privately afterwards, Kay had been like, "Hey, listen, there were times when you were talking where I thought, like, what are we going to do? Because he's not making any sense. I don't know what he's talking about. This doesn't sound right." But then during the filming, we had the research team on the fly looking up the information that I gave, and they were able to dig out articles that proved what I was talking about were accurate and correct. That were like well over
Wow.
100 years old. Yeah. So even
Wow.
with a dedicated team digging in history and archives and things, there was still stuff that missed. They missed, but once I put a finger on it, they were able to take that information and apply it and find it, which was really really cool. Because some of those stories we're going to continue telling in the next chapters of Phantom Forensics, which is going to be really fun.
Yeah, and I think too, with like you just said, being a police officer, you know how to discern, facts or whatever is being fed to you, in a psychic way. You know how to discern the facts and pick out what's important, what's not, and know what questions to ask, the right questions to ask.
Right.
I would say when, especially if you're going on an investigation, I mean, could you imagine being a ghost and hearing, "What's your name? Why are you here?" for hundreds of years? That would
Right. So
drive me
like
crazy.
it's interesting, right? Because that's the way that most human beings who aren't going to dip into their own energy or their own abilities, because I think we all have them, that's how most are going to try to communicate with that auditory, because we know that we can pick up a voice recorder and hopefully catch an EVP, right? But if you go in a spot and you sit still for a while and you kind of meditate a little bit and get quiet, the amount of information that'll flood your mind that is accurate to the space you're in, most people I think would be very surprised with how accurate they would be if they were to sit and just be quiet with their thoughts and just write down their impressions, not just the words they hear, but the things that they're seeing or the smells or the feelings. It's a big
Mhm,
encompassing sort of experience when you're doing mediumship, and it can take a while to get used to, because if I always explain it like when it was first happening to me, because I didn't go looking for it, it sort of happened by accident. It was like in any iteration of Superman that anybody's ever seen, where he starts to get his powers and all of a sudden he's like, "What's wrong with me?" And all the sounds are ultra amplified and his vision's
mhm,
super sharp for no reason. He can't control himself anymore, right? And he has to really learn how to hold that stuff together in order to use it, to make it something that is useful for him and for the people around him. So it's sort of the same thing when your abilities are opened for the first time. It does take a lot of honing and it could be a bit scary, but the more you work on it, the better you'll get. And the fear will go away because it will just become a part of who you are, right?
mhm.
Some people might be scared to throw a baseball in front of other people because they've never done it and they think they're just going to wing it at the ground. But if you go in the backyard and practice throwing a baseball at a fence for 10 minutes a day, eventually you're going to get better at it. And then when you go to stand out and throw a baseball to somebody, it's going to go to them and you're not going to feel that apprehension or anxiety anymore. It's just going to be something you can do, or at least do a little bit. And I think everybody has that with psychic abilities and mediumship and stuff.
Right. And and I think with my abilities of being an empath, I can watch true crime documentaries and I'm picking up things in the documentary that they're not even talking about, but I know it's I find out it is
Yeah.
relevant to the case. And it's almost like when we are put into a situation, whether it's, ghost investigation or murder investigation, we have that mindset of it's almost like we can cut out the noise and focus on what's important. Like you said, most police officers, if they encounter a man who's acting belligerent and pitching a fit, throwing things, may have a bat in his hand, he could hurt somebody. They're just looking at somebody who's crazy and nuts, and they need to take him out. You are tapping into the guy is scared. He's terrified. He's sick in the head. He doesn't have his like you're picking up on a lot of different things. So I
I'll
think that
doing my best. Yeah.
yeah, and I think
Which
that's
is what I
probably
think so that I am clear. I think that all law enforcement officers, all people in these sorts of situations are just doing their best with what they have.
yep.
And I would just encourage anybody who does this job or who is going to do this job to not always take things at face value. Of course,
Mhm.
always protect life and property as you're supposed to in this field. But if you have the opportunity to de-escalate and uh, act with empathy and kindness, it will go much further and it will be a much better tool in your tool belt than anything else. As long as nobody's actively getting hurt, of course.
Yeah.
That's an interesting line for me. Always having to remember is like I have a job where it can be very physical and you have to be physical, but I also have a job where I can be that other person and be very empathetic and very calming
Mhm.
if I'm given that little crack, that little piece where I can see that I can grab them by that and talk them down, we will.
Mhm.
So and things are changing here and I hope that they're changing for the better. Not to go too much into that, but yeah, I think that's important. So if you're listening to this and you're like afraid of what the boys in the locker room are gonna say to you, don't worry about it. You're gonna teach them something by teaching them that it's okay that when somebody's acting belligerent and being a jerk, that you can bring it down just by being kind and using your voice. It's okay. And
Right.
it's better than getting hurt. I'm getting old. I can't do the things I used to do. I can't take a beating like I used to. I just can't. I'm getting old. I don't want to be honest with you. I'd rather talk people down. And all of
Yeah.
those skills, believe it or not, that I learned in the very real world of law enforcement work so well in the world of the paranormal. They are so neck and neck with they just toe this line together all the way through. It's crazy.
Awesome. That's probably yeah, I mean, because then it helps kind of blend the 2 together. I mean, obviously can't be publicly blended, but it probably helps you in the long run just to be a better police officer, to be a
Yeah,
better psychic medium. And, like with cops too, I mean, it's not that if they're not tapped into that they're not tapping this guy's scared. And it's like naturally we have that fight or flight response. If
right.
somebody's acting belligerent and if you have a gun, you're gonna pull that gun and do your job. But like when you're tapping in on a different level, I totally understand it because I do the same
Yep.
thing. It's like this undercurrent that you're feeling. You're like, hold on,
Yep.
I'm sensing something here. And I can't imagine being a police officer and having to not hide it, but not let it interfere with your job as a police officer. So that I'm glad that you have this opportunity to kind of do what you like to do and do it on phantom forensics.
Yeah.
Now,
So
do you approach it kind of like a police officer mindset when you go in to do things like this?
yeah. So always I actually approach it first like a Marine, mission accomplishment. So whatever we're setting out to do, I want to make sure that we do it and we do it well and correct. And then as far as like investigations go. So obviously when I go into the world of the mediumship and stuff, for like we'll take Phantom Forensics, walking around downtown Columbus, Ohio, in the freezing cold, there's no evidence physically that you could see that would lead you to believe that you would know exactly what you were getting yourself into, or even that there was a haunting occurring in this space, because it doesn't look like it should be haunted, right?
Okay.
So when we take that away, it's almost like if I walked into a house where there was a murder and I had to close my eyes. Well, now I have to rely on the rest of my hands to figure out or my senses rather, to figure out what's going on. So in Phantom
Mhm.
Forensics, knowing nothing, being dropped down and looking and being like, well, this isn't haunted looking, so I'm going to have to really rely on what information is coming to me. So we go ahead and we do our meditation where we get into that space and start looking out across everything and just bringing through the information with confidence about
Mhm.
what's happening or what we're seeing, feeling, and observing, and then collecting that. And then the other part of it, my teammate Kay and Dalen, who have this information about what has happened there, without cluing me in, are able to guide me to different spots and say like, okay, we were just over in this location, we moved over here, do the same thing, tell us what you're getting. And because they know that I'm tapping into stuff that they already do know, and it's helping build a case. So they have done their research, they have the facts, they know the facts. Now they have me who's here, and I'm coming up with the same information or very similar. So now we can take the facts of the case, what I'm picking up, put them together. And then where Dalen is so amazing is bringing the audience in. And that's a part of what Phantom Forensics really is about. We wanted the audience to be a part of it more than anything. So when Dalen turns on his spirit box, it gives everybody the opportunity to listen to what's coming in and what is being
Okay.
said through that spirit box, right? So he's acting as the medium in that moment. I've given the information. I'm just listening for the words. I don't really know what they mean, but it's important to be able to listen to it and give the words some airtime as they come out. Right. So now we have a digital part of an investigation, the facts part, the mediumship part. Now we take all of these things and we put them together and we try to form the whole story in as much as we can be about the truth about what's happening there as possible. And that's where Phantom Forensics really shines.
Yeah, the clips that I have seen, I mean, I was just like, yeah, it gave me that feeling like I felt with Holzer Files. I'm like, oh yes, something that I can really get my brain to dig into, and really, and it makes me go down rabbit holes like everybody else on YouTube till 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
Um, but now people can go to phantomforensics.com. How can they support your project and things like this with Phantom Forensics?
So right now for Phantom Forensics, what's happening is if you go to phantomforensics.com, you can watch the show for free from that link. Or if you'd like, you can purchase one of our packages. And the packages come with commercial-free versions of the show, a Q&A with Dalen and I, and Kay, our producer. Some of the packages come with custom patches, which I had one right here, but I think I gave it to somebody. Custom Phantom Forensic patches, a sticker pack, blanket, a notebook, and all kinds of things that you'll get for supporting us, including some other digital stuff. So there's a package with like a gallery reading in it, where you can come and be a
Okay.
part of a gallery reading. We're going to be setting that up for sometime at the end of the summer to make sure all the packages that we could sell get sold. There's different things. So if they head over there, they can look at everything. And soon we'll have t-shirts and stuff up for sale. And it's important that everybody knows you're not putting money in our pocket. We produce this with a production company, Elevate Productions, based out of Ohio. We did this out of our own pocket. We put our own money and resources up front, and we made these 3 episodes. So now what you're doing is anytime you help purchase this stuff or go watch the show, it's one, helping us with advertiser dollars, and 2, that money that you spend on our packages is going back into the pot so we can make more, because
Right.
we want to make more Phantom Forensics, and then we have what we just set up. As a matter of fact, in the last week, we set up a network. It's called the Signal Network, and it's going to just use YouTube. And we're going to bring lots of amazing original programming to people to run alongside of Phantom Forensics. Lots of really amazing paranormal stories, stories about consciousness, more television shows that people miss. Some people that we all have worked with, that we love, that we know want to come back and do some more amazing television in the paranormal. We're working on
Yeah.
it. So if
Oh,
you
that's
come over,
awesome.
that's what you're supporting. You're supporting getting these kind of shows back in action, the way that you like to have them.
Right. And that's power to the people right there. If you guys love this stuff, hey, don't leave it up to the networks to take care of it. You guys got your own production team, you guys are doing a great job.
Yeah,
Support, I guess independent artists and people
right.
doing this kind of stuff because obviously the networks aren't listening to us because a lot of people are upset that certain shows are getting bumped off and they're like, well, the ratings weren't there. Well, it's not just
Yeah,
most
pretty
people
soon.
don't watch appointment TV anymore. They
No,
don't.
and they're all
So,
of those shows are kind of unfortunately dead. All
yeah.
those networks, they're dying. They're flailing around. They don't know what to do. Streaming kind of beat them up. So our ultimate goal is to make this successful, create television shows that we want to watch. And I know that's kind of a
Mhm.
cliche, but it's what every good artist says or what every good musician says. We want to create what we want to see or hear or feel. And I want to see, feel, and hear great stories with amazing people who have had really great careers, and deserve more time to tell more stories. And some people who haven't really gotten started yet, but they definitely have a voice and they should be running up front with everybody else. So
Right.
that's what we're working on. It's not just hey, look at me, because if
Yep.
I want to do hey, look at me, I'd stay solo and do all my own stuff and put my time there. But I really want to I couldn't say more how happy I am to have teamed up with Dalen for this, to have teamed up with an epic production company and Miss K, who's a fantastic producer, and all these amazing people who we're meeting, and we just want to bring them in and work with them. And then for the audience, also, which is super important, is you can opt to pay and help us, but we're not telling you have to. It's not an extra
Mhm.
streaming service. It's on YouTube. Just go look up Phantom Forensics and watch it. That helps us also. Share it with your friends if you want to help us out a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have a link for all that in today's show notes. So, thank you so much, Scott, for coming on. This was great. I love talking to you. We got to go to the Palmer House together.
Yeah, that
That was
was fun.
awesome, and we had we had some really crazy stuff going on with a birthday candle getting blown out.
Yeah, that
I was
was
just
crazy.
like, oh, but yeah, that was cool. But yeah, you are a wonderful guest and a great
Oh,
person,
thank you.
I'm hoping more people like you start getting your face up front. And that's why we want to have you on podcasts and interview people like you so we can
Thank
get you out
you.
in front of others that they're not even aware of it. So,
Thank
but
you. I
thank you
appreciate it.
so much. It's phantomforensics.com. And then if you want to book a reading with Scotty, just go scottythemedium.com. I'll have a link for that as well. Well, thank you
Yep.
guys so much, and I hope to see you all next week.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot. And until our next case, my armchair detectives, stay safe, stay vigilant, and stay aware. I'll see you right here next week on Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot.